All right, so we're ready. Mike, you want to do the introduction?
You know him, so why don't you go ahead and do it?
All right, so we are speaking today with my one of my mentors in the real estate market and a leader in our industry, Mark Wilkinson from Oklahoma City Platinum, Keller Williams. He's been a driving force in changing a lot of people's lives over the past 20 30 years of his career, and I'm privileged to have you on our podcast today, videocast, Mark. Been a while since we've seen each other in person, but I'm really excited to hear what your idea of success is today, and just kind of getting a genuine conversation with each other, um, and explore some of the things that you've been able to share with other people that has actually changed their lives over the last few years here.
Sure,
Great to
sure.
see you today.
It's good too. I miss you, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
tell me.
let's talk about success. Let's just frame it there.
Yeah.
Want to do that?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
A lot of people are confused what success means because we thought for a while it was just making some money. We thought wealth had something to do with success. There's a Gallup poll that said everybody believes that health has a component in it, but it wasn't just wealth there because the money, people just need more money. Money was very limiting. Then some of us thought it was power. And then we discovered that power could corrupt. And so it's not power. Some of us thought it was possession, so we got things like red convertibles or new golf clubs or a bigger house. And somewhere that wore itself out, just like the bicycle did under the Christmas tree, fun for a day or two, but got old. So I think that success is a three-legged stool. I think the first leg is to be successful. You have to be operating inside your passion. There has to be something that's really important to you, something you feel like you're born to do, makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning. The second one is you got to be getting better at that thing, or you hit a plateau and you can't serve more people. So it's not only being in your passion, but also getting better at it. And the third thing is probably leaving breadcrumbs behind. You got to be leaving seeds for someone else. You have to have a legacy piece. So I think if you're doing what you love to do, what you think you're meant to do, if you find a place you can be where you can get better every day, and you can leave a legacy behind you so other people can follow your path, I think that that's a pretty good formula for success.
Wow, that's an incredible definition of success. And I really, what really struck me about that was, like, on a day-to-day basis, right? I think speaking for myself, something that's changed because of some of the things that you told me, and just for people's background, um, you were the team leader when I started in real estate and taught the class here at Keller Williams, where it's kind of like for new agents coming in and getting
Ignite.
up and running, Ignite. And out of that group, you know, looking in hindsight, there were some really powerful lessons learned, and some people who are at the top, still at the top of the real estate game here locally in the Wake County, Raleigh area. So it is really effective, those lessons. I love hearing it again. It's been
Yeah.
too long since someone spoke that way, and it really just, it strikes the heart because you believe it. You really have lived it and shown people, and you used to tell us stories about your struggles and everything, and that's kind of, um it humanizes, it makes people, it empowers them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's the leaving the breadcrumbs for somebody else to build a legacy as well, and teaching them how to do that. I don't think you ever forced us to do anything. You just kind of gave us the information, put it out there, and said, here it is. If you guys want to go do it, you're either going to do it or not, right?
Yeah. I tried to serve three different meals. I tried to say, hey, this is what you should do. This is what you could do, but we're about to find out what you really will do.
Yeah.
And then once what you tell me what you will do, we got to figure out the frequency that makes you successful, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the secret is what you'll accomplish. And I think the biggest misnomer in real estate when we look at success, just to tie that back around, people think, gosh, to be successful, I got to be smart like Einstein. I got to be athletic like Michael Jordan. I got to be rich like Bill Gates. I got to be creative like Walt Disney. And the truth of the matter is, those are other folks. Those aren't you. You got to figure out how to be the best version of you because you won't be those other guys, right? And that's the misnomer. It's about authenticity. When you can show up and be authentically in the room with people, two things happen. They engage with you quicker and they know how to refer you. And if you think about the trust triangle, and the trust triangle has to exist whether I'm your coach, I'm your team leader, or you're my realtor, is you have to be authentically in the room. I have to believe it's you. You have to have empathy for me. You have to really understand my situation, try to get to my core challenges, and I have to believe you have the expertise to help me. So I think when we do it right, we create this trust triangle that people can step into. And now we have a chance to serve them. And when we serve them at the highest level, we get a chance to earn their referral business.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you frame that too. And going back to the earlier question about success is like, talked about leaving a legacy. And me and Ben chose Live Your Legacy for the name of the podcast because we wanted people to be introspective of what they're doing now and be able to write the story that becomes their legacy. And it sounds like that's really what you've done is you're giving people the tools to figure out who they are, who they want to be, and how they can be that person.
Yeah. I got to the point where I was getting good choices. When you're getting a good choice and a bad choice, it's really easy. You pick the good one.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, you pick the hard one because the hard one's usually the right choice. When I got the choice that I was getting good choices, I had to decide who I was trying to be. So I created a definition of that. And after spending some time with my coach, I said, I want to use my ability to motivate, inspire, and train to create an aura of fearlessness to those traveling behind me. So I had to go to Cary and meet Ben because he was scared, right? And I had to help him get fearless. And so it allows me to see when an opportunity comes up, is this a chance to help people get better, to be more fearless? And it's kind of given me some clarity, quite honestly, about what choices I need to make. Your life is like this connect the dot. You remember how we used to do those as kids? And you really don't know why you're in the dot, but once you get past it, you go, oh, that was the bird's beak, or that was the wing. I kind of feel like that's what's happened to me is when I make consistent choices, a bunch of little decisions allow the big decisions to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how did it come about you taking that for your own introspection and then giving that advice to others? Did it come naturally or was that a hurdle you needed to figure out?
Yeah, when I first got into real estate, and I'd been self-employed for a long time, so I had a pretty good EQ, but people kept trying to make me someone that I wasn't. They wanted me to show up as another person. In our industry, it'd be like, hey, why aren't you like Gary Keller? It's because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a knucklehead that kind of talks funny, right, Ben? But if I show up and do it the same way, and I get inside that area of trust with you, I can help you get better because I'm further down the path. My job is to stand between where you are and where you want to go and become that cantilever, that linchpin to close the gap. And I think when I do it for my people, my clients, I'm also teaching them how to do it for their people and their clients. And that's part of that legacy is leading a life that creates an example, if you will, a blueprint for the people behind you.
Yeah, I think it's hard to put Mark into any awkward situation. We had an exercise during Ignite, and I'll never forget. He would put a scenario out there. We're facing someone at an open house, and they're asking us questions. And this one lady who was notorious, she asked Mark like, some question, like, oh well, why should I pay X amount of percent to you as a buyer's agent? And Mark looked her dead in the eye and said, no one will ever ask you that question. Don't ever ask that question again, right? Because, I mean, there's a reality there of like, we get caught up in trying to be that person when we join this industry. And then we meet someone like Mark and he says, just relax, be yourself and see what happens. Give me a month of you wearing your hat backwards or whatever, coming in a t-shirt and flip-flops. Like, we have agents that done that are top agents in our market center and have been for many years, right? It's an authenticity, that authenticity piece. Mark, you've lived that for a long time. And again, like, I think when I look at how I operate now, there's always that voice in the back of my head that tells me, hey, you need to return to that fundamental piece And that's a building block for a lot. And a lot of the younger agents miss that piece in the beginning, I think. Or people that are coming from a corporate environment that's very rigid and, got to dress away, talk away, certain way. How do you walk people through that process, like defining I guess it would be their values?
Yeah, I think it's even deeper than values, but I think a couple things we have to do is successfully use clues. So, like with you, I said, let's talk about what you've done well before. What were you good at? What did you enjoy? And honestly, you can put that same flea on a different dog, right? It's the same thing. So what we did is said, if that's the way you showed up before when you worked your crews, if that's the way you showed up with mid-level managers and above, then how can we extrapolate that and show up the same way in real estate? And what's really nice when we do that, we create a lot of different people that have different skill sets, so we're more attractive to a broader base, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really important is sometimes in real estate they teach it wrong. I don't want you to be the smartest one in the room. I want you to be the most empathetic because then you're really present. There's a book called Heroes on a Mission, and it says that in every story you ever read, in every movie you ever watched, every sitcom, there's a hero, there's a victim, there's a villain, and a guide. And sometimes because we're afraid we need to be smart, we show up and we scoot them over and we sit in the hero chair instead of letting them be the hero of their own story. And when we get in the hero chair, we force them to be a victim or a villain, right? Our job is to simply be the guide. And that's why I say don't have smart answers, ask smart questions, because the person asking the question is really in control anyway. And you'll be able to help them get clarity. We don't sell houses. We sell clarity. We meet people that are confused or curious. We offer them clarity. And hopefully, through that clarity, there's a real estate transaction involved. They need financial freedom. They need financial security. Real estate can sometimes provide it. So, when we're in the clarity business, we don't have to be afraid because we're not salespeople. We're just consultants.
I like that book that you referenced about the story.
Have you read it?
Yeah, it actually changed my business about 2 years ago reading that book, and it simplifies things to a level, I think, that now I talk about the plan with clients all the time. The plan. Let me find out about your plan. Let's develop a plan together, right? Let me help you develop a plan, and that's what people want, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's that is a powerful message to
simple but powerful, right?
How many people are in your market center over there now?
185.
185. Okay, we're about the same there. What's the market look like?
Well, it's really interesting. Agents take two different perspectives. One is if they take the victim chair, it's like there's not enough inventory. But the truth of the matter is, thank goodness the inventory is where it is because it's holding values up. If we flooded the spring inventory, values would drop. And while this market's in transition, while affordability is still adjusting, when hopefully eggs and milk and gas and bread are going to go down so that the mortgage makes more sense at 6, 7, 8%, we want this to be that kind of market. So what we're having to do is they move the cheese. We just got to go find the listings. There'll be some one-time permission to shows. There's more phone calling of our spheres saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm on your timeline, not you're on mine. So do you have any plans in 2023 I need to get ahead of, right? We have to just stir the pot and do a little visionary. When people got scared, and it started with a lot of things in the economy, some of it say it's midterm elections and some say it was interest rates. They got off the field and they got up in the bleachers. We got to get them back on the field. And we do that by simply future pacing them, asking them where they want to be. Right now, one of my favorite questions when I talk to people that said, I'm not looking right now. I say, well, gosh, tell me this. Are you in your forever home? And they'll say, well, it's not my forever home. And I say, well, what does that look like? When do you want to be there? How does that feel? What does that do for your family? Right? I want that for you. If I happen to see a home like that, and even though you're not looking today, is it okay if I send it to you? Just got to get them out of their cul-de-sac and back on the thoroughfare. And when I do that, I think the economy picks up. So it's a little slow to answer your question, but I think it's purposefully slow for us because it allows us to let that market heal. The buyers and sellers are whining and complaining. They got to adjust, and that slow inventory is our best friend right now.
No, that's perfect. That's a good way of looking at it, and I agree. We don't want that inventory spike. Another part of that here locally is like, we're almost back to where we started, or where I started 7.5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? That this market now is very similar, and there's a lot of agents here. Matter of fact, a majority of the agents here have never been in that market. They don't know what an inspection report negotiation looks like, or what seller paid closing costs are. It seems like a whole nother universe. And so there's a lot more work and outbound prospecting going on. I remember, during Ignite, it was like one of the practices in Bold is to cold call, and everybody's, oh, I don't want to cold call. I don't cold call. Well, why don't you want to cold call? Because you don't feel like you're helping people. If you truly believe you're helping people, that call's a lot easier, right?
Yep.
That's one of the things.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
right. When you're a lifeguard, there's a lot of swimmers you don't want to bother, but you got to talk to them because there's someone that an euphoric fun might be mistaken for someone drowning. So you have to check. We're looking for the people that are drowning, so we have to talk to a lot of swimmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if one thing right now, when people like right now, we have a buyer surplus here. Do you have a buyer surplus there?
Definitely.
So one of the things I would do if I didn't want to talk to strangers, as soon as I had someone moving into town and they were looking for a certain house, I'd go into my database, and everybody that had a house similar to what I was looking for, I would just call them and say, "Hey, how's New York going? I just want to check in with you. I got someone coming in from New York, Florida, wherever, and they're looking for a house. And oh my gosh, it's a house just like yours." And I wouldn't be doing my job of protecting you if I didn't call and check and see if you had real estate breath. Because if you were thinking about selling, I don't want to take your buyer somewhere else. Smartest conversation they could make. And they could just pound their sphere. They'd wake them up. They said, "Well, is it a good time to sell? What would happen if I did? What do you think I'd get for my house?" And say, "Well, why don't I just simply give you an equity analysis of your home so you can see?" Right? We have to start the conversations because they're stuck in their cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, that is great. I'd like to just, if we could go back, I noticed the line you said you want someone to be the most empathetic in the room.
Yep.
That one really piqued my interest. And I'm interested to see with people when you find them who say is an agent, but doesn't really associate with them. Maybe they're not that empathetic of a person, or maybe they're a little pessimistic. Do you go for a mindset shift? Do you go for a fake it till you make it, or do you look at maybe this isn't the role for you?
Well, I think that any relationship we have in our lives is better when you ask questions. And obviously, that's what the podcast is doing, right? So even when someone comes to me and says, "Is your commission negotiable?" Now, that scared me to death as a young agent. And I learned all these tricks about tearing up dollar bills and lying down in fetal positions and all kinds of things. Quite simply, I think the right thing is say, "Hey, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I can tell we're in a real conversation. I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, why is my money important to you?" And they'll go 100% of the time, they'll go, "Dude, it's not your money, it's mine." I said, "Then let's have that conversation. Let me show you how I use the systems and models that we use on my team, make you the most money in the most convenient amount of time." I can turn the conversation by being question based, where that would have been a confrontation with the D personality if I'd done it otherwise. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by empathy. I think just controlling the conversation, turning it to a conversation you want to have instead of a conversation they're trying to disrupt, pattern interrupt you with. Okay. And when I thank them for that, if my dog brings me a tennis ball and I throw it and he comes back, he wants me to throw it again, right? If you let people disrupt you with questions, they'll keep doing it over and over again. So the patterning up of thanking them and correcting them makes it feel like, gosh, that wasn't as much fun as I thought it'd be. I think I'll just be quiet and listen. So it allows you to control it with empathy instead of showing off your knowledge by outsmarting them with some brilliant script written by Diana Kokoska back in the day.
They are good, though.
No, they are.
Still effective.
Yeah. And yet what you have to do is, Ben, you have to internalize them, make them sound like you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the hardest thing. I taught all my kids to call me dad. My youngest kid calls me Papa because he knows he gets more from me when he does. He internalized that script and made it his own. We, as realtors, we have to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's interesting because you come to a point where I think people practice scripts so much that they start to sound like a robot. They just want to get to the next line of the script. Mm-hmm. And that can be a dangerous place to be in because it comes off as either inauthentic or just not you, or it's a weird place to be in, and people can see that a mile away.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be somewhat proficient though. I know I do, walking into a buyer's consultation or a listing consultation, and there's parts of it that sound scripted to an extent, but I've turned that into that. This is the part. And I even tell them, look, we're going to talk about the process now. And it's going to sound a little, for you, since you're a D and you're a high, you're a high D, or what's a demanding person that doesn't want to hear all this stuff, is going to be a little painful for you for the next 5 minutes, but your wife wants to hear every word that comes out of my mouth. Right. And so if you want to go take a soda break, me and Martha can sit here and talk about it. And that's where you really, Mark, and I don't know if you ask, I always tell agents here, if they ask me, well, they don't have any self-confidence, and they come to me, Ben, what am I going to do? My business is suffering all this. And I was like, go ask another agent in the office. Go ask the agent that you would hire to sell your home, or you would hire to buy a home, and you respect them, right? Go ask them who they would hire and what that looks like, until you get the answer that you're looking for about yourself. But building that value proposition for yourself gives you that self-confidence, to get through the scripting part and become authentic, right? And we don't want to, I don't want to practice it in a buyer's consultation, a listing consultation, but I will say an open house is a cool place to practice it. I'll do that at an open house, because those people maybe do business with me or not. I really don't. It's not, I didn't have the business before.
Right. Yeah, and it's more of a social setting, and it's a target-rich environment. The NAR study says that 53% of buyers in today's market think they'll find their house in an open house. You and I know that only 2% really do. So it's a natural target-rich environment. And yet even open houses, what a lot of people do is they say, gosh, I'm having a bad week, I should go do an open house. That's silly. An open house is just like a party. There's a before, there's a during, and there's an after phase, and you have to master all three of them. And so that's why I tell people, work your sphere, work your database. And if you're in the real estate gymnasium, don't work on every piece of equipment because the other realtors do. Find the 2 or 3 that make sense to you, and just learn how many reps you have to do to get the results you want. Right?
Yeah.
That's the mystery. Real estate is not easy, but it's simple. And we just make it too complex because part of our brain wants us to be comfortable, and we got to stay uncomfortable.
Yeah. Amen.
Well, that's a good point too that you brought up with Sphere, because I was just in Quantum Leap, and Mo Anderson, who taught it, I forget the percentage she said, but there's signs that the market is changing to where people are now looking to they're working within their own sphere to find an agent. They're not going to an open house looking for an agent. They're calling a friend and saying, hey, who have you used in the past?
Yeah. 43% of people that are first-time buyers, 57% of second-time buyers use referral networking to find their realtor.
Yeah.
83% of people say they will use their previous realtor. Only 19% do.
Wow.
So it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the amount of money we make in real estate is directly proportional to the number of people we come in contact with. And so we just have to be okay. It's a contact sport. And for those of us that don't like strangers, we really need to work our sphere and grow our sphere. That database is important. I was reading an article, David, that Coca-Cola is out of Atlanta, and they had a marketing plan. And the whole marketing plan basically said this: we're never going to market to you when you're thirsty. But you're going to know what it sounds like when you pour Coke into a glass of ice. You're going to know what our logo looks like. You're going to know our ads, because everywhere you go, you're going to see us 30 times a day. And because you see us 30 times a day when you're thirsty, all you can do is think about us. And I think real estate has a really interesting tie that same way, that frequency is a knob we need to know how to turn, because if we don't do the frequency right, Ben, we get too tenacious. And most people don't want to be sold. They want to be consulted. So that tenacity knob, we got to be careful about laying off of.
Yeah. Want to be consulted, not just open doors and sold on whatever pops up.
Where do you want to go? How soon do you want to get there? What does that mean to your family? Oh my gosh, how will that make you feel? I really want you to have that feeling. I'm curious, since I bought into your dream, how can I apply for the job of being your realtor?
Yeah,
that's
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then shut up, right? When it's going
Uh-huh.
good, don't. Yeah,
That's right.
that's.
Right.
I'm still working on that one, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. Awkward silence is not your friend, right?
It can be deafening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so how does that work now with you being a team leader? Are you mentoring all the people in your office? Are you mentoring also other people outside of your office? What does that look like for you? Or are you just looking for the people who feel like they need someone to show them the next step?
I get a lot of kind referrals from people who said, "Hey, I met this person and needed some help." I'm coaching about 20 agents nationwide. Some
Okay.
are with KW and some aren't.
Mhm.
I'm coaching the top 20% of my market center. And then I have about 7 local agents that I coach. And they're on their way here. They're just in a slower process.
Mhm.
But I think that we all have a different value prop, and my value prop is standing in the gap. And so I'm really fortunate that my OP allows me that permission to do both. But also Dave, I get a better perspective of real estate when I'm coaching people in New York and San Diego and Austin, Texas, right? I just get a better perspective, and so I think it brings value back here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that
that is.
value. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, that's a good point. To coach in people in different areas, and I know during COVID, there were some masterminds with the coach I was with at the time, where it was really interesting because we hadn't done this, Zoom call with 20 people, high level producing agents from all over the country, scrambling to figure out what our business will look like moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I think I have 3 in the triangle that I coach. So it gives me a pretty good insight even to where you guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true too, is because I think the industry has changed so much. Having that outside perspective of everywhere really helps. Because if you think,
You know what it did, David, is honestly, it's slowing back down. It got where it was moving so fast and it was never meant to move that fast. It's never to grow at this speed. So I think a lot of old school stuff is coming back into play.
okay,
I think that real estate, what we used to do is we said the reason I have a listing is to get leads off of it. Well, it sells in 2 or 3 days. How do you get a lead, right? How do you schedule an open house when it's sold before you can get the open house signs up? And so I think as this market corrects and gets back to uh, a pace that uh, this it was meant to sell at, and whether that's 25 days or 90 days, I don't know. It's given us room to be professionals again because it was moving so fast. We were just waiters and waitresses taking orders.
Yeah.
And I have agents that have been realtors, top producers for 2 or 3 years now, and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm making offers that aren't being accepted or even negotiated." And I'm like, "Well, welcome to real estate, right? It's not what you thought it was." And so I think that we're in a skill-based market now. We can't just get in the way of a transaction. We have to have some skills. And I think that's going to make the oxygen a little clearer because there's some people that are going to go back to Walmart.
mm-hmm.
Do you have someone in your market center that looks like Mike that's name is David?
Oh,
You
I
called
am
him
so
Dave.
sorry.
You called him
Oh,
David, and I was like, "Wait, who's he?"
I'm sorry.
I honestly
Yeah.
didn't lose it.
Yeah. It's actually my brother. So take it as a compliment.
Oh,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if he's a handsome guy, take it as a compliment. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to check on
Well, if he
that
looks like
later.
me, he is. We know that's
Yeah.
the answer to that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah. I apologize for that. Yeah.
No, you're good. I didn't even recognize it, but yeah, I agree. Do you think? I mean, you mentioned it. People going back to Walmart. Do you have any kind of inclination or number that you feel, whether it's a percentage, of how many realtors will lose in the next year or two?
Yeah. I think 25% of the market's going to go, the realtors in the marketplace are going to go back to other industries.
Wow. And so that's, I mean, that in of itself, I mean, it sounds like a shame people leaving the industry, but for the 75%, how much of an opportunity is that?
And even in the triangle, about the top 10% do 90% of the business. Let's just be honest. It's even not even an 80-20 rule. But because of the fluctuation, it's an opportunity for us lower agents to reintroduce ourselves to the market so we can pick up some mental market share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you noticed the big teams in your office picking up more market share?
Yeah. I see them doing it 2 different ways. One is I see them picking up retiring agents, people leaving the industry. They say, "Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you put your license in referral? Let us consume your database. We'll say that you just got better because you joined a team. We'll do a lot of we, and we'll pay you a 20% referral fee for the business that we can cook out of your database."
The golden handshake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I see a lot of them doing that. And the other group is pounding some areas where other people have been and maybe hiring and firing people really quickly just to consume their database. So I see both extremes. But right now, the people on the field right now are the ones that have to buy and have to sell. We need the rest of them to get back on the field, get out of the parking lot, quit tailgating, get on the field and play. And I think we'll see that as spring arrives.
Yeah, we just had just went with Nina to leadership meeting in Charlotte. It was really interesting what the leadership for Keller Williams thinks of the numbers, like the overall numbers and how many people we've already lost. And they're getting out of the industry. It's not they're going to a different competing firm or anything. They're just not able to make it work. People, when they don't have a closing for 4 or 5 months, things start getting
So
sketchy.
everybody has a different need in the organization from Keller Williams from top to bottom. And you and I both know from a market center level, there's a lot of dead weight. So I'm running a contest right now. It's about activities. We're calling it March Madness, and you get points for the activities you do to help increase business. You get 2 points for a certain number of phone calls, for a certain number of texts, personal notes, open houses, all the stuff. And what we're doing differently is if you turn in your card, you stay in the game, and if you don't do anything, you forfeit. My bottom 62 agents have not played.
Wow, man.
Now, what that tells you is they're not engaged, right?
Yeah.
You can go to the gym and sit in the parking lot, and it's not going to improve your condition. You got to go inside. You got to you got to work a machine. You got to do some reps. And so I think we have to own that to some degree. But there's some people that don't want to work, and they got in this industry when it looked easy. But my career in real estate says that people that get in when it's hard and do the right things are the ones that stay in. Those are the ones that succeed. And they're the ones that in these kind of markets in the future can leave breadcrumbs for other people to follow.
It sounds like you're doing everything that you can to offer the help. And I think that's all we can do as owners of Market Center is to, because it really is, the buck stops with us up here at the top. And so it's like when someone leaves, we want to make sure that we've reached out to them, cared on them, and given them all the tools. And then if they still decide to go, there's not, something there that we didn't try to attempt to help them with. And
I want to
I've
change that
seen,
just a little bit.
yeah, okay, go ahead.
If they leave, it needs to be their fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had this incredible kitchen and I had this pantry full of food and I got a freezer and a refrigerator and you starved to death in the living room. That's your fault.
Yeah.
You should have come on in the kitchen.
It's really interesting. Some of the people who have left and tried to, they go and they try the other shiny new object, and that's a very temporary situation, and then have even landed somewhere else and still reach back out to us for advice and understanding and to have that empathy because they're just not getting it where they went. And, it all goes back to the Keller Williams core values and why when we were Nina Parker Realty Group and then came back, right? Why did we join again? It was like being around people like yourself. When we went to FSO in Austin, it was just, it's the culture here, man.
Yeah.
It's a law of attraction, right?
Well, we tell our kids they're a product of their environment, so we're really careful about who they hang out with, right? Real estate's the same way.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, that brings up a really good, and it's actually one of my biggest, I think, grievances is probably the best word to put it. But that number, that 79% that get out in their first year, I all have stuck, and I've only been doing this about 20 months now. But my biggest fight with that is how many of them would have stayed in if they were in the right place in the beginning.
Yeah.
How many that have that just a bad first year and it's not their fault. Like you said, the kitchen was empty in their case. And how do we combat that and fight that? And whether it's change their mindset, change their resources, change what they need, find out what they need. Do you have any kind of insight as to people watching this who maybe own a boutique or a franchise of some place and what they can do to fill the kitchen?
Yeah, Mike, I think see how I did that? That's really good on it. Yeah. That means I'm learning based, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did some survival training when I was a guide younger. I did a lot of backpack mule deer hunting in the mountains. And survival is an interesting thing. And what you realize is survival is part of your environment. They're mentally prepared, but they don't control their environment. We used to say you have to stop, you have to evaluate where you are, you have to find shelter, and you have to build a fire. The market center or the environment's the shelter, and the fire has to be in your belly, not under your butt. So if the fire's under your butt and all you need is the next paycheck, this is a tough career because it's a 60-day, maybe 90-day gestation period to a paycheck. And if you're chasing the money, they can see it on your forehead. Ben, we've been in sales before. You know what that commission breath looks like, right? I bought a house, the most recent house I bought, and the seller said, you can pull up those roses in the front flower bed. They've never been any good. Well, she was right, but I pulled them up and I put them in the flower bed they should have been in with the soil they should have been. And now they're on the west side of my house. I got the prettiest roses on the block. They had simply put the roses in the wrong flower bed, right? And so what we have to do is we have to find the place where we fit or belong, and people challenge us every day. And I think Keller has a great formula for that, because Robert Kiyosaki, in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he does this grid where he says, first you're an employee working for someone else on an hourly rate. You get tired of that and you become self-employed, and now you're working for yourself on an hourly rate, and all you've done is you got a bad boss. We have to become business owners, because business owners, they trade their knowledge for money. And Keller does a great job of helping us get across that gap. Small franchises that see that as well, that's their unique selling proposition. I can get you where you need to be a business owner, where you no longer have a ceiling because of hours, you have a floor because of knowledge, and you can become an investor. And anybody that's willing to help people stand in that gap and get them across it will succeed. Some brokerages find keeping them as sales members are golden handcuffs. I know when I was in the roofing industry, they wanted our salesmen to drive expensive cars and have expensive watches and have bad habits, because the more we were addicted to money, the more we'd stay in sales. This is not a sales gig, it's a consulting gig. We have to become business owners. That's why I think the environment you're in is really important. And when you're in the right environment and you see other people's success, you can build that fire in your belly and you can get up and go to work every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, that's powerful right there. I mean, to look at yourself, that's, I think, a big issue is some people still think of themselves as employees for themselves and not a business owner. They don't really say, this is my business and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Man,
Totally
I'm so fortunate. Like Mike, I've told you this before, but I really fortunate that when I joined real estate, I had the best. I mean, I had Mark and Nina mentoring me.
Mhm.
You know, I basically jumped on a team with, you know, I had everything that Keller Williams offers at that time given to me, and surrounded by a group of high achievers and hungry people. And it was a magical time in my life. I came from an industry, residential construction, where there's a lot of negativity, a lot of alpha male stuff going on, and not a lot of professionalism at all. And that kind of rolled over, and Mark, almost called you Mike.
It would have worked.
Kind of,
I like David too, just so you know. Yeah.
he kind of softened that sword, that hammer. You know, that was one of his analogies, was like, whoa, man, put the hammer away, you know, get out the measuring tape, dude. Don't, you know, you don't have to get out the nail gun right now. And yeah, man, I could listen to it all day, Mark. I really could. I miss you so much, man, and our conversations. I know you're busy as hell and build something awesome over there, but every day I wish you were here. You know, I really do, man. I know when we get off of this call, me and Mike are going to have a conversation.
Well, shameless plug. Get me on your education calendar. I'll come out there for a few days. We'll do something. Okay.
We're
Love to do that.
It's done.
Okay.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me to get to come home for a little while. I think you have to have your beliefs, Mike. You have to be able to know what you stand for. You have to know what you're willing to be fired for, and you have to know what you're willing to be hired for. And I think when you have that clarity, it allows you to move ahead. And that's what we're offering these other people. It's just giving them enough vision to do what they need to do. And it's hard to be fearless. COVID taught us a lot of bad habits, and that world shrunk. And I think as it comes back to normal, our job is to keep getting people to interact with others and get this community back. Keller Williams functions better as a community, not as a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's coming up soon, right? Family reunion, the biggest Keller Williams event to act as a community. So once again, another plug. If you're in Keller Williams and you haven't been to a family reunion, I went my first year and it truly revitalized me. After my first 3 or 4 months, I hadn't had a listing or a phone call really. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And that community is what got me my first 2 listings right as I got back.
There you go.
Yeah. And so I'd like to just kind of wrap up my portion of asking you questions with 2 questions. One being, what's some good advice that you could give to anyone? We do want this podcast to reach all kinds of audiences, realtors, business owners, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, anyone who can pull a really good piece of nugget out of this. What's one advice you could give anyone? And second, for the realtors that are watching this, knowing our profession, when's the best time for people sitting on the line going, is it time for me to get a coach yet? When do you acknowledge that that's time for you to put yourself from entrepreneurial to purposeful and go into that coaching level?
Okay. So the second's an easier question. I'm going to start with that. And it's when you're stuck. I like to use the analogy. I do analogies sometimes, Ben. Like when your car's off the road and it's muddy and you're stuck, sometimes you can push yourself out. Sometimes you can call a couple buddies and they can help you, but every once in a while it's stuck good enough. You need a pro. You got to make the call, AAA, you got to get the tow truck. So if your business or life, because I consider it life coaching, not just professional coaching, if you're stuck somewhere, a perfectly balanced life has a balance of faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun. If you're stuck, then a coach can usually get you unstuck. And it's for 2 reasons. One is they have a better view because they're at 10,000 feet. And the second reason, they've already been in the laboratory because they've done it with other folks, right? Mm-hmm. Success leaves clues. So I think if you feel stuck in your world, it's time to raise your hand. And wherever you're stuck, you should find a coach to stand in the gap and help you get out of it. And us as salespeople, that's the whole reason we hope buyers and sellers always need us, because it's not about contract to close, because that's kind of a manufacturer thing. It's all the troubles that come up, all the headaches. Honestly, the things we complain about are the things we should be celebrating, because that ensures a computer will never do our job. We'll always be necessary. And I think when it comes to other people, the most important thing is I'm a big believer. It's my hammer. I'm going to hit it. It's authenticity. We shouldn't try to be perfect parents, because we're not. I think we'll be able to tell our kids that, hey, I just screwed that up. You're going to need therapy, but you'll be fine. I think when it comes to financials, we all have snafus, and we want to say, hey, I made a mistake and I need to learn from that. I'm a big believer that anything that happens as an adult, we should say, hey, that's my fault. What could I have done differently earlier to make sure that didn't happen? And I think if we have that, we're not only living our life the best way we can, we're growing every day because we learn from our mistakes, and we're being transparent because we're authentic, and people can accept us for who we are and they can learn along with us. So I think that's my answer.
No, those are 2 fantastic answers. And not only have I just learned a lot, but I'm excited for the audience to watch this and be able to pull nuggets out of this entire thing from our conversation. Ben, do you have any more? I'm sure you have plenty, but more questions for Mark.
Well, we have a lot of history. We could go all day. I just want to thank you first for taking the time out to drop a little knowledge on us and the audience.
Sure.
And I still use the hand over the heart when I'm speaking, and I think it's important that I let you know and I've said this to you before, but just the impact. I thank you from the bottom of my heart from the impact you had on me when I first started. And sometimes people may not always tell you that that's a long-lasting impact, but I know that the other people I speak with who maybe you don't all the time, they tell me the same thing. So I know you're not a person who's centered on, that ego boost, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that your efforts don't go unnoticed, and that it really has transformed lives. And I hope that people go back and watch this 2-3 times and hear the message, and maybe reach out and they do hire a coach or seek out a mentor. And that authenticity, in the beginning, we were talking about authenticity. I think that's what I'm leaving with today, is to stay true to that. I think I've done pretty well over the last few years, centering the business around that a little more than I did in the past. I don't know if that was COVID or not, but I still owe you a trip to Oklahoma. It may be you come to Raleigh before I do that, but I still owe you a trip. And either way, I will just be blessed to be in your presence. And thanks.
Well, Mike and I are really good friends, but I love you too.
Nah.
Always have, other will. So anywhere, anytime, just give me a holler. I'll be there. Okay.
All right. Thank you so
right.
much, Mark.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate y'all's time.
All right.
Thank you.
One.
Yeah.